All right, guys, so today we are going to be dividing numbers written in scientific notation using method 2. So in the previous video, we learned method 1, which was the longer way, where you write out your numbers in standard form, and then you divide the numbers, write your answer in scientific notation. It's exactly how we learned how to add and subtract numbers. Same thing with the first method of multiplying numbers. So if you like that method, then you'll probably stick with method 1. However, method 2 is going to be more of your tricks and your shortcuts. So this may help some of you. Here are all the steps up at the very top. Like I said, it's really hard sometimes to write my steps out in words. It's much easier for you to listen to me and watch me, just kind of like in class. So we're gonna start with that. I'll kind of review the steps as we go, but you can just look back to those on your own if you'd like. All right, so the first step says that you're gonna write your division problem as a fraction. So like in the previous one, these are actually the same 6 problems from method 1. We're just doing them a different way. So you should be getting the same exact answers, but don't use that as a shortcut. Some of you may like this method better. So we don't like to have division written out. This is kind of an old school, well, not old school, I guess, more elementary way to write division. We're going to write it as a fraction. So we have 1.5 times 10 to the 6th power, all divided by 3 times 10 to the 3rd power. If you look at your steps, it doesn't say to convert anything to standard form. That's method 1. That's the longer way to do it. We are going to do it based on a shortcut. All right, so the second step says use one big circle and circle the first numbers on the top and bottom of the fraction. So you're talking about your actual numbers in front. So, sorry, let me try to fix this. Hold on. So we're talking about, there we go, 1.5 divided by 3. Then the third step says you're going to, and you're using your circles to kind of pair them off. So we want the numbers to be divided together, and then you want your base 10 with your exponents to be divided together. So you're going to look at these and these kind of separately. The third step says to divide the first numbers. So you're dividing 1.5 divided by 3. So there is a few ways you can do this. So we're going to start with the longer method. So we have 1.5 underneath 1.5 divided by 3. So just like when you multiply decimals, you don't care about the decimal right this second. So let's just divide. So 3 doesn't go into 1. So 0 times 3 is 3. You can 0. 1. Bring down your 5. 3 goes into 15. 5 times 3 is 15. Subtract. You have 0 remainder. And your answer isn't 5. That decimal is here, so you bring it back up. So your answer is 0.5. All right, so we're going to write that first. So the answer to this one is 0.5. Then the second part, it says that we're actually going to divide these just like when you can kind of see through that paper, sorry. Give me a second to get this paper. All right, so just as when we were doing our power rules for when we were multiplying bases of 10, so if you have 10 to the 6th power divided by 10 to the 3rd power, the top number just means you have 10 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the bottom, you have 3. 1, 2, 3. We cancel out our pairs. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. We have 3 10s on the top. So our answer is 10 to the 3rd power because we have 10 3 times. So that's our answer to that. So you're going to bring that down 10 to the 3rd power. And then we know there's multiplication in the middle of those. So that is our answer. Okay. If you look up here to step 5, you see this word important. It is important. You have to look at your scientific notation and you have to make sure that it's actually in scientific notation. So this first number is the part that we really need to focus on. Is it a number equal to or bigger than 1 but less than 10? And in this case, it's not. 0.5 is less than 1. We can't have it less than 1. So what you're going to do is just like you did before, you are going to convert this to standard form and then rewrite it. So we're going to move our decimal 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. This number in front doesn't matter now. Our decimal's back here. The number is 500. And now we need to write 500 in standard form. So you need a number equal to or greater than 1, but less than 10. So we know our first number is going to be 5. 5. Our next part is always times 10. And then our answer was 500, so our decimal was here. So you got to count how many times it moved. 1, 2. 500 is a large number, so that exponent stays positive. Or you can look, if you're trying to convert scientific notation back to standard form, your decimal would be here. You move it 1, 2 to the right to get 500. So we know that that answer is correct. So very similar to multiplication. You actually divide your first numbers together. You divide the 10 bases with the exponents together using your power or your exponent rules or your power rules, and then you put the two pieces together. 1.5 divided by 3 gave you 0.5. 10 to the 6th power divided by 10 to the 3rd power gave you 10 to the 3rd power. And then when you rewrite it in scientific notation, this would be your correct scientific notation. Both of these values are equal to 500, except this is the correct way to write it. Okay? So let's go ahead and do number 2. Thankfully, step 1 is already done for us here, so we don't have to rewrite our problem as a fraction. We're going to circle our numbers because we're going to end up dividing those. We're going to circle our tens with the exponents because we're going to divide those. This one's a little bit easier. So we have 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 to the 5th power divided by 10 to the 3rd power. Sorry. We have 10 5 times on top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 3 on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. They cancel out. 1, 2, 3. So we're left with 2. So it's 10 to the 2nd power. So we bring down the answer, 10 to the 2nd power. And these are literally the only 2 parts you need for your scientific notation. There's multiplication in the middle. So your answer is 2 times 10 to the 2nd power. So for this one, last thing you check, is the number written in correct scientific notation. Is this number greater than or equal to 1 but less than 10? And it is. So that is it. Bam. You may want to look, those of you that kind of remember your tricks or your rules when you're subtracting with, no, that's a lie. When you're dividing numbers with the same base with exponents, you had 6 and 3, and now you have 3. Here, you had 10, you have 5 and 3, and now you have 2, so you subtract. That is kind of your trick. So 6 minus 3 gives you 3. 5 minus 3 gives you 2, if you would like to do it that way. Some of you probably are good to go at this point if you would like to kind of start doing them on your own. However, if not, just kind of keep going here with me. All right, so this is method 2, so we are not writing these numbers in standard form. We're doing it a different way. We're doing kind of a quicker way if you want to think about it like that. But we have to have it written as a fraction first. It's easier to do it that way. So we have 2.5 times 10 to the 8th power divided by 5 times 10 to the 4th power. So for this part, remember, we actually want to divide our numbers together, and we want to divide the same base with the exponents together. You're dividing the 2 separate pieces. So the first thing we need to do is 2.5 divided by 5. So how you do that is 2.5 under the division symbol, 5 on the outside. You don't really worry about the decimal right now. 5 doesn't go into 2. 0 times 5 is 0. Subtract. Bring down your 5. 5 goes into 25 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. You have no remainder. You bring up your decimal. So your answer is 0.5. Now, I kind of forgot to do this part in the beginning, but if you would like to divide this number in your calculator, you're more than welcome to. 2.5 divided by 5 gives you 0.5. So that is going to be our first number in front. The second part, you have 10 to the 8th power divided by 10 to the 4th power. So my favorite way of doing this, which I believe most of you know, is to write it out. You have 10 8 times on top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Divided by 10 to the 4th. 10 one time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. I think a lot of you like to slash them out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're left with 10 to the 4th power on the top. So your answer is 10 to the 4th power. So this part right here, that value is 10 to the 4th power. And you're multiplying in the middle. So we divided these two numbers to get 0.5. We divided these two values to get 10 to the 4th power. If you want the trick or the shortcut, 8 minus 4 is 4. When you're dividing numbers with the same base, you can subtract the exponent. So you could have gotten your answer that way. Last but not least, you have to look at your scientific notation. Technically, it's written in the form of scientific notation. However, there's a little problem. 0.5, just like in number 1, is not a number equal to or greater than 1, but less than 10. So we are going to have to convert this number to standard form. So this means that we need to move the decimal 4 to the right, wherever it's at. It's right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 0 in front doesn't matter anymore because the decimal's back here. This new number is 5,000. So our actual value is 5,000. The only thing that we need to do now is write it in correct scientific notation. So we know we can't have our decimal here. That's too small. It needs to be after the first digit so that it's less than 10. So our first number is 5. Times 10 is always in the middle. And then you count how many times you moved your decimal. In 5,000, the decimal's always to the right because it's a whole number. And you're going to move it 1, 2, 3 times. You want to keep it positive because 5,000 is a very large number. Also, you can check to see if your answer's right to match it back to 5,000. You know your decimal starts here. 1, 2, 3 to the right would give you 5,000. So you know that your answer is correct. All right, so once again, you divide your numbers together. You divide your 10 base with exponents together. You get your 2 parts. The only special thing about this one is that you had to rewrite it in correct scientific notation. All right, so by now, a lot of you probably are getting this. If you would like, you're more than welcome to pause this video, do 4, 5, and 6 on your own, and then check them back with the video. You can do them one at a time. It's totally up to you, or you can keep following along. Remember, if you're just copying it down, you're not really learning a whole lot, so I would at least try some of these on your own. So step 1's already done for us. It's written as a fraction, so we're going to split off our 2 parts. So we're going to end up dividing our front numbers together, and we're going to divide the bases of 10 with the exponents together. So 2.8 divided by 7. We're going to do it the long way first. I think a lot of you probably are learning something from this. So 2.8 divided by 7. Remember, you don't care about the decimal right this second. We're just going to look at the numbers as a whole as 28. Most of you probably know that the 4 is going to go here. So 7 can't go into 2, but it can go into 28. So 4 times 7 is 28. You subtract, you get 0, no remainder. However, the answer is not 4. 7 does not go into 2.8 4 times, okay? 7 can't fit into 2.8, so you got to make sure to bring up your decimal. So the answer is either 0.4, or if you put your 0 to start, 0.4. So that is the answer to this first part. So we're going to put it right under this first part. If you want to go ahead and put your times in the middle from the problem, you're more than welcome to. Now we're going to do the second part here. So 10 to the 9th power divided by 10 to the 3rd power. So you know me, I like to write everything out. You have 10 9 times on the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 3 on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. To divide, you cancel out all your pairs. And you should be left with 6 10s on the top. So that is 10 to the 10 to the 6th power. That's one way you can do it. So then you would write right under here, because that's the answer to that part, 10 to the 6th power. Another way you can do it, if you have the same base, which you always will for scientific notation, it will always be 10. You can subtract your exponent. So 9 minus 3 gives you 6. Okay, so that's it. Everything's done. If you would like to use your calculator for the first part here, you can't really use it for this part, for at least most of the calculators that you have, but you can for this part. So 2.8 divided by 7 gives you 0.4. You're more than welcome to do that. All right, so problem. This is not correct scientific notation, because just like 0.5 is less than 1, 0.4 is also less than 1. So it's too small. So this is one of those that we have to do that extra step. Just like when you are multiplying using method 2, you have to put it in correct scientific notation sometimes. Dividing using method 2, you're going to get numbers that are not in correct scientific notation. So you're going to have to change it. Let's see. So this exponent means you need to move this decimal 6 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. Remember, this 0 doesn't count anymore because your decimal is all the way to the right. So this whole number is 400,000. So the answer to your problem is 400,000. This way is written in the format of scientific notation. However, it's not correct because this number in front was too small. So now we are going to place our decimal in the correct spot. So 0.4 was too small. It has to be a number less than 10, equal to or greater than 1. 4 fits into that. So our first number is 4. Scientific notation, we always know times 10 is in the middle. And then we count. In 400,000, our decimal was at the very end. So we're going to count from decimal to decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know that 400,000 is a very large number. So you're going to keep your exponent positive. Or you can think about it, if I needed to convert this back into 400,000, I would put my decimal here and move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would give me the same answer. So you know you're correct. All right, number 5. It's already written as a fraction, so we are going to divide our first two numbers, and then we are going to divide our bases with our exponents. So 8.1 divided by 9 first. So we're going to do it the long way. 8.1 divided by 9. 9 can't go into 8, but 9 can go into 81. 9 times. Remember, you don't worry about the decimal right this second. 9 times 9 is 81. And when you subtract, you have 0 remainder. Don't forget to go put your decimal back where it was. So our answer to 8.1 divided by 9 is 0.9. You know you're going to bring down your multiplication sign in the middle, so you can go ahead and do that now. And then the second part we have to do is divide 10 to the 4th power divided by 10 to the 2nd power. So you can write it all out. You need 10 4 times on top. You need 10 2 times on the bottom. Cancel out your pairs. You're left with 10 to the 2nd power. Whoops, sorry. So the answer to the last part is 10 to the 2nd power. Another thing, if you have your same bases and you're dividing, you can subtract your exponents. 4 minus 2 gives you 2. All right, so where did our answer come from? We took the very first part and we divided the top number divided by the bottom number to get 0.9. We took the top number, we divided by the bottom number to get 10 to the second power, and there is multiplication in the middle. Okay, so that is the correct answer. The only problem is it's not written in correct scientific notation. So what we need to do is fix that. Also, it's very close to scientific notation. 0.9 is close to 1, but it is still too small. So we need to move our decimal 2 to the right. 1, 2. Our decimal's now at the end. We have 1, 0. So our actual answer value is 90. All right, for this one, you need to make sure that you put your decimal so that it's a number between 1 and 10. You can't put it all the way to the right because 90 is too big. So, sorry, you have to put it here. So your first number is 9 times 10 is always in the middle. And then you count. How many times did you have to move it? And this time it's only 1 time. Now, for this one, 90 isn't a huge number, yet it's greater than 1, so you should have a positive exponent. However, some of you may think twice, so should it be negative or should it be positive? Well, if you move this 1 to the left, our answer would be 0.9, and that's not what we got. We got 90, so you have to move it 1 to the right to get that 90. So that is your final answer, 9 times 10 to the first power. All right, last but not least. First step is we need to rewrite our problem as a fraction. 9 times 10 to the 6th, all divided by 3 times 10 to the 6th. Remember, we need to pair up our first numbers with our second numbers. We're going to divide the first part and then divide the second part. So this one's pretty easy. 9 divided by 3 gives you 3. Times is in the middle, so you're going to bring that down. And then, let's see if we have some room. We have 10 to the 6th power on top and 10 to the 6th power on the bottom. So we need 10 sixes on the top. I lied. We need 6 tens. We need 6 tens on the bottom. And this one, gonna be a little different. What happens to them all? They all cancel. Now you got to think about this one because a lot of you are going to put 0 because nothing is left. However, you got to think about what these values are. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 1, 1, 1, and we're multiplying on top. So really, this is equivalent to 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. So the value of this is 1. Now, problem. If I just put a 1 here, that's not scientific notation. 3 times 1 isn't correct scientific notation. So we have to think about how do we write a base number of 10 to be equal to 1? And you have to think back to your power rules. If you have a base with an exponent of 0, it's equal to 1. So 3 times 10 to the 0 power is where you're going to get that 1 from. Anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. So this has to be your answer because this isn't correct scientific notation. The easiest way to do this one would be to remember your exponent rules. 10, if you have the same base, when you're dividing, you can subtract 6 minus 6 gives you 0. All right, so this one was probably the hardest one. It was just the most confusing with that little piece right there. However, we have done the same method for all of these. We have used method 2. At this point, hopefully when you have a preferred method, you can do method 1, you can do method 2. It does not matter which method you use. You can mix it up. Some problems are a little easier to use this method, like for example, number 2. It's super basic. 4 divided by 2 gives you 2. You can write this out to get 10 to the 2nd power, and then you have your answer. The ones that may be problematic is if you're not sure how to divide these, if you don't have a calculator, or problems like this where they all cancel out. You may not be sure what to do here. Method 1 may be a little bit easier, but it is totally up to you. Once again, you are going to have a quizzes on this. There's probably going to be 10 problems on it. I don't think I've at this point. I don't have it ready, but it will be ready once you do this. You do this worksheet. You make sure you have these examples in front of you. You can pull up this video in another window. Have it help you with those problems. Make sure you're not guessing. Make sure your numbers are written in correct scientific notation. If you have any questions, you can message me on Remind. You can email me. You can message me via Teams if you're using Teams. There's multiple ways for you to get in contact with me, so please ask if you have any questions. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you are understanding the dividing. All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.